Susan Gardner here for Municipal World. We're at the 2019 Spring Workshop for the Ontario Municipal Administrators Association in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Joining me in the Municipal World Media Center is Scott Luey from Port Colborne.
Hello.
Welcome.
Good morning.
So you're going to be chatting here at the conference about Port Colborne's experience with asset management plans. And of course, those are relatively new requirements that fell onto municipalities. And tell us about the experience in Port Colborne.
Sure. So it's been around, 10 years, just a little bit longer, that we've had the requirement under the accounting standards. But as new regulations come in, the province brings down new rules. We're always making sure that we're in compliance. And sometimes it feels a little bit like a moving target, but ultimately, the rules are there for the right reasons, and it is a useful tool once the municipality has it in place.
So when this first became a requirement, a few bumps along the road.
Yeah, I think we had, an experience that probably was replicated all across Ontario and beyond, where, people were blaming sort of, the regulators who made the rule. People didn't like the rule, particularly internal sort of disputes at cities and towns where one department thought another department was doing it to them. But ultimately, we had to get everybody on board and move forward with a city, across the city plan and asset management structure.
So internal communications around it, not really a great understanding maybe of where the requirements were coming from.
Yeah, very much so. Engineering departments and roads departments were sort of in a position where this was brand new to them. This was something that they didn't have to do before. But through communication and through lived experience, we were able to sort of demonstrate internally at the city that there was a benefit. There's a benefit across the board. There's an accounting benefit, but there's also a capital, planning benefit, a life cycle benefit, and even just the inventory, knowing what you own and where it is in the city.
So, in terms of documenting, the municipalities really had, a century or more of infrastructure that in many cases was completely undocumented in any sort of organized way, right?
Yeah, very much so. We relied on long-serving employees for most of our background knowledge, people who remembered when a road was constructed or a new building was bought or built. And documentation was weak. And I think that's an experience that a lot of cities and towns had. And I think it was a chance for us to take pause and say, hey, there's a better way of doing this moving forward.
So now, with a decade of this under your belt, what are kind of some of the takeaways, I guess, from the experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. Definitely, I think the communication, the need to communicate internally, in really three ways. Sort of internally among staff across department lines, which is sometimes difficult. Sometimes information gets siloed up. To council, communication between staff and council, whether that's through the budget process or through other reporting, and really the communication to the public too. Because sometimes capital projects that were pursued by council or the city were based on complaints, based on perceived problems with the condition of assets. My road needs paved. And now that we've gone to a more objective way of doing our capital planning because of the asset management plan, the public needs to have an understanding that, yeah, this road is going to be paved, but this is the priority, and this is when it's going to be paved. And sometimes that's a tough, when you're the one driving over the pothole every day because it's on your road, it's tough to accept. But really, it's taken the decision-making, I think, to a more proactive level.
And some assurance in that, too, that decisions being made are objective. They're not being influenced by, other personal factors that,
Yeah, very much so. I mean, we all, I think, sometimes run the risk of giving grease to squeaky wheels.
Absolutely.
And if people complain loud enough or long enough that they'll get a council member to support the complaint or to support the request, But this has given us a chance, a tool really, to say to the council member, hey, I know you're hearing one side of the story, but look at what the data shows.
Yes.
And that's important.
So the data, the evidence to kind of back up the decisions, again, is really important in this
Yes.
case, right?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else that you want to share as part of this?
Off the top of my head, I think one of the most important things for us was software. And what we're doing in 2019 is deploying a new service requests work order software. And so what that's going to do for the first time in Port Colborne is tie the initial call or complaint from a taxpayer, a staff member, a council member, to a job, assign the job to our public works staff, presumably assuming it's a public works issue, and then eventually to an asset. So that's going to give us a sort of tip-to-tail solution that's going to help with our asset management plan.
Fantastic. So it's going to come in that period from nothing to like a full end-to-end process.
Full solution. Yes.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Very much so.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your story.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm Susan Gardner for Municipal World. We share your stories.